and welcome to the Goldenrod Podcast. I'm Ben, as always I'm joined by fellow Pokemon enthusiast Conor to bring you some of the latest and greatest Pokemon news and a few laughs along the way. This week we're discussing the recent Switch 2 non-announcement, and we're speculating on how the future of the Pokemon franchise plays into the Switch successor's future. We're also answering several of your Pokemon-themed questions from last week, including how Mega Evolution will be implemented in Pokemon Legends Z-A, and our favorite Pokemon gaming experience. As always, you can jump to a topic using the timestamps in the description below. Hello, Connor. How are we?
I'm doing all right, mate. Yourself?
I'm not too bad at all, thank you. And one of the things I do want to quickly touch on that you mentioned before we start recording, we've passed 200 subscribers on YouTube.
We have. It very much seemed like a wall we weren't passing for a long time. We were stuck at 199, but there you go. We've had apparently 8 subscribers in the last month.
Big, oh, wow, really?
Big
do we know where from? Are they from that?
You know, they're probably from that one XP share we did.
And then we never got around to doing another one, even though
we're working on
it. And we're working on it, okay? It's just finding the time for these things is always an absolute nightmare. But if there's a particular, Pokemon game you want us to potentially discuss in the future for that, can't promise we'll get around to it for another decade or so. But let us know in the comments
over 5K
below.
views, right?
It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's actually ridiculous. I think I just need to, I don't know. I just need to sit down and just have a day of playing the next Pokemon game, which I almost said, and then just do a load of recording. I just need to sit down and do it.
Yeah, agreed. I'm
We're
also in a position where, again, starting to try and launch a photography business, I have been flat out.
Yeah,
it has been non-stop this end. But
yeah.
I put money down yesterday. I ordered my sample prints.
Yeah.
Which was horrible because it had to be things of this is what I'm going to demonstrate as a final product.
Yeah.
So it needed to be as near to perfect as I could get, and they're not. They're just not, because perfect doesn't exist.
It doesn't. You will sit there for hours, arguing with yourself over probably pixels worth of changes of slight variations on colors, and you'll never be happy with it. But 99.9% of the people that you would show to would probably just go, they're the same. What you on about here? Are you mad?
My niece actually caught me the other day. I was editing on my laptop around my dad's, and she walked up and went, "So, do people notice the edits that you make?" And I'm like, "No, not really." "So why do you do it?" I'm like, "Oh, because I hate myself."
I've got to punish myself. I can't have nice things.
Yeah, basically.
Oh dear. Well, I am looking forward to hearing more about it in the future. So yeah, because are you going to? Did you say you were going to show us something or some kind of not convention? What's the word I'm looking for? Am I making stuff up?
Very possibly.
Are you going somewhere?
So.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting mad. Maybe I'm the one going mad. I don't know. Let's jump into some Pokemon themed goodness this week, starting with a couple of questions. So the first one comes courtesy of Tony, who has asked, what's your favorite experience playing through a game? It could be Pokemon to keep it related to the podcast, or you can venture away to a different franchise. Now, if it's all right with you, should we do one Pokemon and one non-Pokemon?
Yeah, go on then.
Have you got any? Because I think I have.
I've got a Pokemon one that I will always remember. It's a little bit sort of cliche, but it was the first time I found red in Pokemon Gold.
Mm.
And the reason it stands out to me is because I didn't find it for nigh on 10 years. If not longer.
Oh.
It wasn't until I was in secondary school and decided to get a hold of the game and play through it again that I went all the way through Kanto and then just happened to go up Mount Silver and found red at the top. And my mind was blown because this was my favorite game growing up. And how had I never encountered this before? Never even heard of it. Never knew this was an encounter you could have. So yeah, that one sticks out to me.
Because how old would you have roughly been when the first time that you played through it?
Oh, I remember the first time I played through Red, I was 4.
Right.
Because I couldn't even read at the time. I remember distinctly playing through Red before I could read. So Gold would have been 2-3 years after that. So maybe I was
okay.
7, 8.
And I think that for all the complaints you might hear about later Pokemon games holding your hands a lot more than the previous games in the franchise did, because like I remember the Game Boy Advance the Game Boy games of Gen 1 and Gen 2. I remember the amount of times I got lost playing them because they weren't very clear on, oh, this is where you now need to go. And I can understand why somebody would miss out on that red encounter, because it's like literally the end game of a post game in a different region that requires you to have a word with Oak, who doesn't even spell out that, oh, you should go to the top of Mount Silver. It's just,
no, it's just,
I've unlocked Mount Silver
now
for you.
Yeah, you can go there now.
That's it. So I can completely understand why that's what happened. In terms of my favorite experience playing through a Pokemon game, so I'll start with a Pokemon game. I think I want to talk about like actually playing through an entirety of games, so not a part of that game. I probably would go for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire the first time I played this, because just to set the scene for people that maybe haven't heard this before, this was at a point where I had taken a break from Pokemon for quite a lengthy amount of time. I had skipped several generations, and I'd stopped playing at Gen 4 and then just forgot all about Pokemon. And then I remember stumbling upon some YouTubers that were doing a randomizer and then doing a bit of a look into, oh, what Pokemon games are out? Oh, they're doing a remake of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, one of my favorite Pokemon games in the Gen 3 games. And I went out and bought a 3DS XL and my copy of Omega Ruby. And just playing that and going, this is like what I imagined it being as a kid, of all these like amazing graphics and all these quality of life changes. But then they went even further with it, and tracking down all the Pokemon, completing the Pokedex at a time when I could connect to Pokemon Bank, and it just reignited my love for the franchise and got me back into it. And I haven't looked back since then, and that was several years ago now.
Yeah, for me, I think I've said it before, mine was Sword and Shield that brought me back to the franchise. Because it was one of the ones that, yes, Sword and Shield is flawed. We can all accept that. I think it got a lot more hate than it maybe deserved. Got some hate it definitely did deserve.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as all right, it's the first Pokemon game on an actual console, like mainline game on an actual console. And it's my home region. I had to go out. I think it was when I saw it was Hop say mate for the first time, I was like, that's it, I need to go buy this game.
Yeah, that's it.
And I went out and bought a Switch and bought the game and started a YouTube channel off the back of it. So
good old Pokemon.
Pokemon.
What about a non-Pokemon game? Have you got one that springs to mind?
No, you're gonna have to give me a minute on this one if you've got an idea.
Okay. I think I've got one, and when people talk about, is there a movie or a game that you would gladly have amnesia for so you could re-experience it for the first time? And for me, it is probably Final Fantasy IX. So this game, I rented Final Fantasy IX from one of those old-fashioned, not even Blockbuster, it was like one of those little independent places.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, Final Fantasy is one of them weird ones where I think most children at my age kind of knew of its existence, knew of some of the characters, but maybe hadn't played it. That was my experience. None of my friends had played it. And I went to the shop and I was like, all right, I need a game to play for the weekend. Final Fantasy IX. Oh, it's got 4 discs. This is amazing. Taking it home. I went around a friend's house and we played it there. And it was a mix. For me, the way I kind of described it was it's a mix between Pokemon, with that turn-based battle mechanics, and bizarrely Resident Evil because of the problem solving that you have to do at specific points of, I've got this item, what do I do with it, blah, blah, blah. And I remember playing it for about 10 minutes, and my mate was like, this is just like Pokemon, it's rubbish, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, yeah, let's do some other stuff. Took it home, played the hell out of it for that weekend, and value for money was terrible because I didn't complete it. I had to return it and then go back and rent it again because, like, going through 4 discs worth of content and playing through, experiencing the story, experiencing, like, the battle mechanics of, this scratches an itch that Pokemon didn't because it's 4 characters on your team. There's multiple characters on the opposite team. It's in real time, so everyone's bar's charging, and when it charges, you get to attack. And that then made me go on to retroactively play Final Fantasies 1 through to 8.
Wow.
Buy them all, play them all, fall in love with them. And it's one of the reasons why Final Fantasy, if you had to ask me what my favorite gaming franchise is, Pokemon's up there, but so is Final Fantasy. And there's a few others, and they all kind of interchange depending on, what mood I'm in and, new experiences with those games. It's just phenomenal experience.
See, Final Fantasy is a weird series for me because the first one I ever played was 13, and I never played it long enough to leave the corridors.
Yes.
Which, if anybody's played that game, you know exactly what I mean. I basically got up to the bit where you unlock Odin, I think, or maybe Snow gets his summon.
The Shiva sisters, yeah.
It's just after that.
Yeah.
I got about that far, and I was like, oh, this is getting really good. And then just stopped playing it. I think my Xbox died, got the Red Ring of Death.
Yes.
Which was fun. And then I went off and played Final Fantasy VII, which was a very, very cool experience to play the first Final Fantasy VII, not the remake. I played it on stream, so I was lucky enough to have some level of guidance, but also a bunch of people sat there going, no spoilers. Don't you dare. No spoilers.
Yeah.
Don't let them know. Yeah. But having people go, okay, by the way, you may want to just like stop and grind for a minute. So I never hit that kind of wall that would have, as a kid, made me go, nah, game's stupid. I don't want to stop and go off and grind for 3 hours. I'll just stop playing. So finished Final Fantasy VII, thoroughly loved that game. Don't think I'd have got along with it as a kid because even playing it now, I found that there was no tutorial until like 4 hours into the game.
There's no real direction. It's kind of like, I know I need to do something and go somewhere, but the game doesn't really tell me where I need to go or what I need to do. And it is I think it's a product of its time. Like before, PS2, a lot of games were just kind
had manuals.
Yes.
You used to have the manual, and you would sit there and you would read the manual on the way home to get excited about the game, and then be told, no, you're not allowed to play it till after dinner. So you sit there and read through the manual, and you learn all about the characters. You learn all about, and you find Luffy in there, and you're like, how do I unlock her? Where's she? She's not in here. There you go. So once I realized that, I kind of forgave it a little bit. I then went to try and play Final Fantasy VIII. I did not get along with it.
Very different style.
Very different style. I found you were constantly having to change. You were doing micromanagement every single time before a battle. And don't get me wrong, I've always said Final Fantasy is kind of menu simulator. It is.
Yeah.
But Final Fantasy VIII really it was heavy, and I wasn't a big fan of the characters. I have been told Final Fantasy IX is something I need to play. It is on the list. I have a friend bullying me every single week to be like, have you picked it up yet? Have you started it yet? You should play that. You're sad? Go play Final Fantasy IX. I'm like, no, give me a break.
There are a lot of rumors going around that there will be a Final Fantasy IX remake in the next couple of years. Whether or not that happens is another thing. But I still think Final Fantasy IX is probably one in the probably the one that holds up the best. I think for a lot of people saying that Final Fantasy VII holds up the best, I think there's a lot of nostalgia going on there because I've recently been playing through that on the Switch, and I must admit I'm like, oh, some of this dialogue isn't great. Some of the characters don't get a lot of interactions. There's a lot of silliness and goofiness, which you do get in Final Fantasies, but more so in this one, and it isn't very good at actually telling you where to go. There have been multiple times I've had to go, I need to look up a guide, which Final Fantasy IX never felt like that. It was very fluid, flows through, great cast of characters, great battle system, really rewarding level up and ability mechanic as well. It's a great game. And if you've got it on Steam, there are a bunch of mods that upscale a lot of the background. A lot of the old style games used to have, well, your character is basically running around a painting. So someone somehow has created some kind of algorithm that upscales all the background pictures, so they look really crisp and really nice on a modern day 1920 1080 monitor.
Wow, nice. All right, my turn.
Yes,
let's quick fire a couple of these because gaming experiences, we've been having them forever. One of my first ones would probably be Tomb Raider. I think it's Tomb Raider 2. You start in the mansion. I played this at a time when I didn't know how to play games, so all I did was run around that mansion and lock the butler in the fridge.
Yes.
And the thing is, you say this to people, and everybody's like, yeah, I'll lock the butler in the fridge.
Yep.
It just seems to be a universal thing that everybody did. And I love that. I love that as gamers. Spyro 2 was the first game I ever completed myself. I sort of got my dad to beat other games for me. But Spyro 2 was the first game I ever completed myself. I love that franchise. I've even gone back and...
Ripto's something once it the second one.
It was Ripto's Rage over in the US. It was Gateway to Glimmer in the EU.
Right.
Spyro was a really weird series for me because I had the first one, but this was during the time when I was skirting back and forth due to, Dad being in the army, where we were here, there, and everywhere. And for whatever reason, the copy I had didn't agree with my TV. This happened a couple of times. It happened with DVDs and stuff like that. So it was just in black and white. So, there's a couple of things. The first Spyro game I played in black and white. A Knight's Tale, the film. The first time I watched that was in black and white. No idea why. I think it was like
Strange.
A PAL versus whatever.
NSTC or whatever it was.
But it shouldn't be because PAL's EU and whatever. The point is, I played the first Spyro in black and white, played the second Spyro all the way through, beat that. That was fantastic. One of the big ones for me, though, is still Halo 3. Just in general. Yeah. Halo 3 was a fantastic game. I loved the trailers coming out for it and got it kind of day one, played through it. It was the first game I really played online by myself as well. Played through it, legendary mode with my brother and two of our mates, a couple of doors down, all the skulls, got all those. And then it got me into writing. It got me into film and media and screenwriting. So this is back in the day. You remember Red vs. Blue?
I never watched it, but I'm aware of it. Yes.
Yeah, so Red vs. Blue was what is now referred to as machinima. It came out, was done originally in Halo 2, I want to say. No, it was originally done in Halo 1, and then they advanced up. Halo 3 basically put in a whole bunch of features for them so that people could make movies on it. So you had the camera mode and stuff like that, so you could play.
Was it the Forge?
So you had the Forge where you could build your arenas and things like that. You would then go in with your mates and act out your scenes, and then you would go in with the camera mode afterwards and get all your different shots and angles and add your bloom and your flare and all. Stunning bit of work. Got together with two of my mates. I was actually kind of dragged into the project and ended up writing an entire series for Halo. I did so much research into the backstory of what Halo is and the universe around it, and had lists of the proper names of the guns and how they function and stuff like that. Love that game to pieces, and it is a big reason as to where I am today and why I went to university and all that kind of thing. So,
wow. And gaming honestly can change lives. It is ridiculous what gaming can do, whether or not it's bringing people together and a manner of other things. It's just phenomenal. I have a few friends or family members in my life that just don't game. It's just not their thing. And I just think you are missing out on so much quality storytelling. There are some games that I think have better stories than movies, TV shows, books. It's just phenomenal, and it's really annoying because when you think of a game, you don't think of the individual writers, the people, and all the different parts that have to come together to create such an experience all you remember is probably the name of the game, and you might remember the developer or the publisher.
Yeah, but the thing is, all these people came together, and none of them are in control of your experience. You still build your own experience with that game. Whereas if we go to see a film, we both watch the same film. We both play the same game.
Yeah.
We had very different experiences with that game. And to bring it back to Pokemon, the first time I played a Nuzlocke start to finish was Pokemon Black. I did it on my channel. Broke my heart.
Yeah.
Really, I still have such loving memory of a lot of the Pokemon from that game that I played. More so than I remember any Pokemon in any other playthrough I've ever had, because it was a case of, okay, you got me out of a tight situation. Oh, you were terrible, but I kept you on my team, and then you died right at the last hurdle, and I've missed you. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful moments that you can build through games. And, Nuzlocks are this wonderful thing where it's a case of you play it your way, you build your own experience, and make the game what it is yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, funnily enough, that's how I ended up with my mascot. Sixes, the Meganium. It was so for those that don't know, it was a Nuzlocke that I did. It was a live stream series that I did. I got to the Elite Four, and I had Meganium, and I think 3 or 4 legendaries, and then something else on my team. And the Elite Four, because it was a Nuzlocke, I got absolutely trounced. I had increased the levels of the opponents I was facing, and it got to the point where Meganium was the only Pokemon that was still alive and was just shrugging off attacks because of Reflect, and I basically built it up to be a Stallmon, thinking I'm never going to use this, and it got me through that fight to the point where I then arrived in Kanto for the second part of the series, and I had to rebuild my team with just 60s, and it just kind of like these experiences that you get from games can stick with you for years, if not the rest of your life. And it's absolutely beautiful.
Yep, agreed.
Let's jump into a proper Pokemon themed question that we have had, courtesy of Lemon Drop, who says, what would you think about action commands in Pokemon games, meaning optional timed inputs that do something extra? They've pointed out that this is specifically for single player because they can't see it working in competitive because it might give an unfair advantage. Possible uses, so they're giving us some prompts, which is always good. Extra damage, partially block incoming damage, chance to inflict a status effect, increased XP gains, maybe certain trainer classes like Ace trainers will be impressed and give you more money after a battle. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So should we clear up what action commands are?
Yes,
just for those that might not know. So action commands are typically when you're playing through a game and you are in some kind of battle, it will give you a prompt such as press X to do something, and usually there will be some kind of cinematic playing out in that battle, but it usually doesn't cut away from that battle, if that makes sense. So it's supposed to be implemented in a way that's very fluid. So some of the more modern ones I can think of are Final Fantasy 16 has these, Kingdom Hearts 2, God of War. There's loads of games. So it's very different than quick time events, which are typically, like you said before we started recording, press X not to die, where there's a cutscene and you just press prompts not to die, which I think is a boring way to do it.
It's not great.
No.
Cool. Weirdly enough, when we were talking about things we'd like to see in Legends ZA last week, this is kind of something I thought about. The idea of like you're fighting a noble Pokemon or a mega Pokemon, as I think the case will be in this version, and it's rampaging, and you get into a situation where, and this is the thing, is all I had in my head was, well, it's a quick time event, so you press X to not die. If you can either dodge or you get into a certain event, and it's like, well, no, press the command now and throw the bomb in its face while it's up close and do extra damage. I'm not sure how it would work. I think action commands are a better way to go about it. I don't know about in battle, because you've still got the turn order and things like that in Pokemon battles. Maybe, I think, is it the Mario RPG or Paper Mario has a case of like if you select the command and then you've basically got a Guitar Hero bar where you press the button again at this right time, or you press the attack again at the point of impact, and then it does more damage. That could kind of work. But yeah, no, I think the only way I could see action commands working would be when it's you versus the Pokemon.
Yeah.
And it's a case of time slows, camera zooms in. Do you dodge or do you do this awesome thing?
I agree. I don't think you can implement them in... I think the nature of these, they have to be implemented in a way that it takes a already memorable battle and just heightens it. I think that's the way that you implement these correctly. So I think, like you, it shouldn't be for random battles. It probably shouldn't be for trainer battles. It should probably be for, oh, you're in this noble Pokemon fight or whatever it is you're against. You know, I'm thinking about how they could have implemented this against Eternatus, for example, and things like that, where it's an opportunity to go, you're in a battle. This isn't your generic battle. How can we just heighten the experience? And maybe it's a case of, you know, when you are, you know, throwing the bombs, for example, if you manage to just roll out of the way at the correct time and hit it on the back, it'll get stunned. And then that's where you can press, you know, X, triangle, whatever it might be. And it's like, oh, you send out one of your Pokemon.
Snap its neck. No, sorry.
In a Pokemon game, could you imagine? No, maybe. But something like that where it just allows you to kind of show... It allows you to show things with Pokemon that you can't do in your traditional battle setting.
Yeah.
So,
talking about the fight with Eternatus as well, it would have worked quite nicely if it was a case of like, I know they were trying to emphasize the raid aspect of it, but it would have been really cool if you were the one controlling Zacian and Zamazenta, and they were still doing their Behemoth Blade and whatever, the Behemoth Bash is what it called, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
But if it was a case of like, that's charged now, press it to go, and then you just feel a little bit more in command, you get to see that cinematic, that I could see working.
You know what, actually, another way I could see working, and again, the reason this comes to mind is from the Final Fantasy VII remake of there's certain points in the game where you can summon monsters to help you, and it displays as a bar and it kind of counts down, but it's just like a bar of energy that charges. I can actually see that being implemented in Pokemon of, you know, you get into a Pokemon battle. It's one of those big battles against, you know, the end of the game, something like Giratina, for example, and you're on the back foot. Like it's almost a semi-scripted battle where you're not going to lose, but it plays in a way that it looks like you're going to lose. And as you're trying to like scramble and go, okay, how do I survive this? That bar's slowly charging. I can just imagine like that epic feeling of, okay, I'm about to lose, and the game is built in such a way that just as you're about to lose, it fills up. It's like, okay, I can now activate my action command, which is, you know, an extra powerful attack, whatever it might be. And again, it's just that extra way that you can just beef up those battles that are already in the Pokemon games and just show, just bring more like oomph to it. The Pokemon already has those moments.
They tried to do something like that in Scarlet and Violet, where you throw out the Professor's Miraidon or Koraidon, and then you're losing anyway, and then you terrestrialize and suddenly Terror Blast does it. And if you've seen the videos, you don't even have a choice whether to press that button or not. You can use an item, and it goes, oh, you meant to use this attack? Okay. It's like, that's it's not quite the same, is it?
No. It's just moments like that. Speaking of that part, the other one that kind of comes to mind is where your Pokeballs are locked at the end of the game. You're like, oh, what do I do? And just that, like, I figured it out myself of, hold on, wait a second. I wonder if I scroll down and I press A, oh, it works. And this is just another way to kind of bring that, you know, it's that rewarding that player for being either intuitive or asking the right questions. And that's the way I see it working. Other things like, and maybe, you know, Lemon Drop's suggestions here is maybe that, you know, that what they've suggested about like critical hits and stuff, can still work with what we're saying of those epic moments of, this attack then allows you to hit for critical hit, or, if we see the return of the agile style and the strong style, you use your action command and then all of a sudden, I've unlocked an extra move slot, or, it stuns the opponent, which frees up some attacks that you can use. There's ways that this can be implemented without actually breaking what's already there.
Yeah, I do like the idea of, because we had the noble Pokemon in Legends Arceus, and some of the noble Pokemon descendants you could ride, and some of them were enraged.
Yes.
And the two never interacted. It'd be very cool if the ones that were enraged, after you beat them, you could call them in as assists. Similar to what you're saying about
like
summons. Just like,
Yes.
again, you can't do it every single battle. It's got to charge up, and you can only do it every now and then. But yeah, you call in your Arcanine, and it burns the opponent.
Yeah. Yeah. There's loads of, because actually, when you think about it, those noble Pokemon, once they calm down, that's it. You don't see them again, do you?
No. I mean, you can go back and fight them again, I think. You do have the option.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they allow you to test yourself, as they say.
Oh, okay. I imagine the battles are still the same. There's no increased
exactly
difficulty. Yeah. Okay, right. Well, I think we've kind of come to a conclusion then of how we'd like to see these implemented. And again, it's not like this is reinventing the wheel. This is something that other video games have done for several years now, and I think have done really well. And I think that's why I lean into the whole, just use it as an opportunity to just give your battles more oomph.
Yeah, agreed.
Be happy with that. Right, okay, let's move on to the next question that comes courtesy of King Nido. Awesome work as always, guys. What are your hopes for how Mega Evolution will be implemented in Legends Z to A? Gameplay mechanic, same or different? How to obtain new Megas? Tangent away. Obviously, a regular listener that knows that we like just going off on massive rants and tangents.
Doesn't sound like us. Don't know what you're talking about.
Have you got any thoughts on how you want to see it, or how you expect to see Mega Evolution implemented?
I want my noble fights to be Megas. I want every single one of them to be a new Mega.
Yes, that's the way to do it. They don't want to see Charizard be the first one that you fight.
No. I want every single one to be a Mega, and I want every single one to be a new Mega. How do I want it implemented in the game? I would kind of like it not to be as easy, because
Agreed.
X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, once you unlock Mega Evolution, you use it every single time. Like it becomes a point of, my Pokemon is evolved, I've now just got to press a button every time and watch an animation that's really, really long. It's cool, but it's really, really long and doesn't need to be. So for me, I'd like to see it be less usable, but because of that, be more powerful. Now, to be fair, you're not going to have I say you're not going to have a lot of battles. Maybe we'll have more battles in Z2A. Yeah, I don't really have much of an insight outside of that. Just make it less often.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. I think that Mega Evolution is one of those strange ones where once you get it, why would you not use it? You've got it there, you've got that functionality. I think, something that we've spoken about before with Pokemon games is, and one of the reasons we both enjoy Nuzlocke so much, that ability to build up your relationship and bond with your party Pokemon. And I think that that's how they should implement it. I think that, yes, Megastones, Megastone and the bracelet, I think they should still be implemented from a lore perspective. But maybe I think, because this is set in the future,
Past.
Actually, think it's set in the past, sorry. And I was just going to start thinking about then about how they can change it but make it tie in with the lore. But they've already said it's about the bond between the trainer and the Pokemon, right?
Yes, but you do
So
need the
in
Mega Stone and the bracelet to do it.
Yeah. So thinking about it, like all they need to do is go, okay, so from a gameplay perspective, you need these two items, but then, okay, from a lore perspective, how about you have to build up your relationship with your team? So, for example, let's say you caught a Venusaur straight off the bat. You couldn't Mega Evolve it even if you've got those two items because you haven't got the bond that you've built up with that Pokemon. What I want to see is that reward for, oh, I've had this Pokemon for a couple of I want to say gyms, but whatever the checkpoint system is in that game, I've had this Pokemon for a while. I've got the two items that I need, and therefore I can now Mega Evolve it because I've built up that bond. And again, you could tie this in with what we've said previously in the action command of, let's say you've got your starter, and that starter is now fully evolved, and from the pre-game footage, the drops, whatever that information is, that this Pokemon does have a Mega Evolution. How great would it be is of like, how do I Mega Evolve this? You're in a battle against another Mega Evolution Noble version, whatever it is. And one of the action commands is suddenly your keystone is glowing, or whatever it's called. And then it's just like press triangle and you press it. And then all of a sudden in that moment, it Mega Evolves. And then from that point, you just have it almost on a cooldown. So, one of the things is one of the issues with Pokemon, despite the issues of Pokemon Go, one of the good things they've done, I think, is Mega Evolution having cooldowns because it stops you from just spamming it and you have to play a bit more around that. So, for example, if you Mega Evolve your Pokemon, you know that, okay, I can't go straight into the next big battle because that that time is still cooldown time is still running, but maybe there are ways to reduce that. So, for example, caring for your Pokemon, putting it into Pokemon battles, healing it, again, building on that relationship mechanic that we've already had implemented in previous Pokemon games, but doing it in a new way, which rewards you for caring for your Pokemon. And the benefit is you get a stronger Pokemon to use.
Yeah, because you've already got it in Legends where you don't unlock the agile and strong style of a move unless you've had the Pokemon and used the move enough. So we've already got this sensation of growth. Wrong word. Can't think of it.
Progression.
Doesn't matter. Progression. This level of progression with you and your Pokemon. So I love this idea of, no, you've got to build that bond before they Mega Evolve. And I think if you're talking about using it on an action command, I actually kind of prefer that. And to tie it back into my idea of like, make it more special. Don't let me use it every single battle. We can do it like the Dynamax, how that was done, where you're basically only allowed to use it in the boss fights. Because that's where the Dynamax zones are. And you can create the lore aspect of it because, this is old Kalos. Maybe we haven't mined or found enough keystones yet for everybody to just have one. So maybe the keystones are all in large rock form, and those are by whatever the new form of noble Pokemon are. That's why they can Mega Evolve, because they've got the keystone there. They've already got their Mega Stone and things like that. They can do it on their own. In that area, you got to fight for a little bit, and then once you're kind of on the back foot, or you're finally at a point where you're getting ahead ever so slightly, you get that trigger, you get that prompt of, okay, now you can Mega Evolve. You get that cinematic, you feel awesome, now you can kick some butt.
Yeah, and I love that, and you can still have your cake and eat it, because what you could do is once you hit the post game, it's like, oh, you've completed the game, then it just becomes like unlocked. So it because you've gone through those checkpoint, those flags of the game, and you've only been able to use Mega Evolution those at the points where the developers want it, because they want to have give you that experience. Once you complete the game, it's like, well, gloves are off now. If you want to Mega Evolve, you can Mega Evolve whenever you want. And I think that's a nice way to do it. And by limiting Mega Evolutions up until that point, makes you appreciate them a lot more. And again, it would like make you care about your Pokemon, I think, a lot more. Because I think back to playing through Pokemon X the first time, and I can't remember which of the Kanto starters I chose, and I don't know what I did with that Pokemon. I think, and probably because I just like whacked it on my team and just went along. Whereas if we implemented some amazing story beats of that Pokemon actually ties in with your character growth, your development, the story, and has those moments of where it suddenly has to, like, get stronger for your benefit, I might actually care about it a lot more.
Which is something the anime has always nailed, that idea of evolving mid-battle that we've never really had in-game. And Mega Evolution is the perfect way to implement that of, I'm on the back foot, Pokemon drops to its knees, looks back at you, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Power surges between you both.
Yeah.
Mega evolved.
I'd love that. Yeah. I just think if we're going to see something that we've already had before, Game Freak need to put a new spin on it to make it more entertaining. But it's the fact that they are bringing back Megas. Is it a case of they just know it'll help to shift units, or is it because they feel like there's something more for them to do? And I'd like to think it's going to be the latter, that they've got an idea that they want to run with. And I'm hoping we've kind of nailed what they're hopefully thinking of. What I don't want is just a repeat of what we had through Gen 6 and Gen 7 of, at some point you get the stone, there's a little bit of a story element to it. Okay, now you can just do it whenever you want.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, right, fine. And while it will be nice to, see new Megas, which I hope we do get, again, once you've seen that new Mega, it's kind of like, okay, cool, now what? And there are certain, I remember when I've played Gen 6 and 7 in the past, where sometimes you Mega and it's just an easy win, or you don't Mega because you're just like, oh, I know I'm going to like steam through this battle because I'm over leveled, so why would I Mega Evolve? So it needs a way to just improve that experience. And I think that's the way that you do it.
Yeah. One last thing as well, give me side quests for all the Mega Stones. I think we've
Agreed.
said that before, but yeah, all the Mega Stones can't just be lying around. I need to do something relatively tangential in order to get it.
Yeah. For me, items on the ground should be literally like they should be something where, okay, that saved me a bit of time and I've not really had to go out of my way to do it. So like Scarlet and Violet, I think they did items on the ground quite well of, none of the items on the ground are groundbreaking. They're not, they're all things you can get. But if you're going locations anywhere and you see, you might take a little bit of a detour to get it, or you might just drive your ride Pokemon over it and press A to it. That works for me. It's fine. I don't want to have to do that for Mega Stones of, okay, it's hidden at the very bottom of a cave. Whoop-de-doo. So what? Like, where's the lore element of this? These things are meant to be these powerful stones that allow you to unlock, further potential in your Pokemon. Why would it just be at the end of a route? It wouldn't. There should be a story element to that. Oh, this is a stone that's been handed down in my family from, my great-great-grandfather who had a whatever the Pokemon is. Been waiting for a worthy trainer to pass it down to. Oh, let's have a look at your Pokemon. Oh, you need to build up a bit of a better relationship with this Pokemon. Come back to me when you've done that. Even something as simple as that is better than what we got in previous games of, it's on the floor. Yeah, great.
Crazy thought. So this idea of like there being large chunks of keystone lying around. What if they're large pink rocks? And because they're just out in the open, they're causing Pokemon to randomly Mega Evolve. So they're dangerous to keep wildly out in the open. So we should collect them all up and put them in one place, and that becomes the Anastar City Sundial.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, but I'm just spitballing.
So I don't think that's the way they go, but there's nothing to stop them doing that because that sundial does nothing in X and Y. It is such a...
it lets you find more Mega Stones.
Yeah. I don't want to use the word plot hole because it's not a plot hole, but it's the fact that we've got this big chunk of rock that's never been explained outside of a handful of little, tidbits, what it actually is. So they've got like pretty much full creative license to do something with that, which is what we speculated on last week of where are they going to go with that. But I do like the thought of just the stones being out in the wild. And what I think the other thing that I like about that is, if the mega Pokemon are going to be almost the checkpoints, much like the noble Pokemon were for Legends Arceus, what I would like to see is the fact that later on in the game, you can then go back to those stones and there's different Mega Evolve Pokemon there. And, there are more options to do the battle mechanic that we had in Legends Arceus, where you have to throw the bombs. But let's improve on that and increase the difficulty. So the first one you go to, you beat the Mega Evolution, you then come back at the end of the game, it's got a new Mega Evolution that you've not caught, you don't know what it's capable of, and you're having to battle an even stronger, noble fight. I think that's the way to do it, is if we're going to have these Mega Pokemon return, do it in a way that is epic and rewarding.
And if you're wondering how a Mega Pokemon can Mega Evolve on its own, Mewtwo did it.
It didn't it? Yes. I'm happy with them just glancing over that personally. I mean, look at in the anime, Ash's Pikachu evolved from a Pichu from hanging around with a Kangaskhan. Like they can shift things around, they can move things around, and you know what? It's all in all likelihood in a different timeline. The rules are slightly different in this timeline. Like a lot of the games don't have that much connectivity, and that's on purpose because it doesn't hamstring them to having to go, okay, we've got 9 generations and several spin-offs, how do we fit this in the timeline and everything? They just don't. Plus, they just go, okay.
Theoretically, so Mega Evolution came about after the ultimate weapon was fired. The ultimate weapon was powered by Xerneas and Yveltal. If Zygarde is supposed to be the balancer of those two, it's got to have power equal to them, and therefore there shouldn't be any reason why Zygarde couldn't influence Pokemon to Mega Evolve.
Yeah.
Like, if it has a similar kind of power, and that power is what created Mega Evolution in the first place, then, yeah, it should be able to go, yeah, there's the stone that creates it. I imbue it with the power to enrage this Pokemon.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely one way you can do it, but you don't even need to go that far. You could literally just say the weapon that went off, it's still left background radiation in that we don't quite understand, and then by the time of X and Y, well, it's dissipated more, so therefore you wild Pokemon can't Mega Evolve, or it's very unlikely. Whereas 200 odd years ago, it's possible because of what's happened.
Mega particles.
Yeah, like literally something as simple as that. I mean, depending on what they want to do, they could actually just go, oh yeah, the Anastar City Sundial is part of, if not the weapon. And over the 3,000 odd years, people have just, they know it's important, they know it's there, but they don't know what it actually did. It's been lost to time. Like there's a lot of, because X and Y was so unfinished, they've got so much leeway with it, which makes me think that's part of the reason they've returned to it, because they've got so much creative license with it, and it feels unfinished to them.
Yeah. Again, if Legends Arceus was a game somebody wanted to make, I can imagine a return to Kalos is a bunch of people going, we never got our Z.
Yeah.
I'll want to finish the story that we never got to tell.
Yeah. I'm so excited for this game. The more we talk about it, the more I cannot wait. I didn't have this level of excitement for Legends Arceus because I didn't know what I was getting. I remember I didn't pre-order it. It was on the morning of release, or it was the weekend of release, and my daughter was just like, "Do you want to go halves on it? Because I really want to play it." I was like, "Yeah, go on then. Yeah, I'll go out and get it." Bought it, played it over that weekend. I was like, "Oh, I'm in love with this game."
I still love that you make your daughter go halves on you with games.
It's because
she's how old?
So she would have been probably 9 at this time, but it hadn't long been her birthday. And I was very much like, I don't want to pay full price for a Pokemon game. So when she was like, half price, yeah, come on, go on then. And I pay enough.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
So.
You actually, all you've done is not made your daughter pay full price out of her birthday money for a game.
Exactly.
I'm just teasing you.
Let's move on to the next topic. That is, Nintendo Switch is the most successful platform for the mainline Pokemon game. So over on the Nintendo Switch system, Pokemon has sold over 96 million units so far. Over the last 3 months, Scarlet and Violet have sold 560,000 copies, bringing in Scarlet and Violet's total to nearly 25 million units. Do you want me to quickly run through the total units sold on each of these consoles?
Go on. Yeah, we love these.
Game Boy / Game Boy Color, 75.8 million. Game Boy Advance, 35.3 million if you round it up. The DS, 62.1 million, and then the 3DS, 56.9 million. Now, it doesn't surprise me that Nintendo Switch has sold more. It's the previous consoles were always handheld consoles. They're not your, the only word I can think of is mainstream consoles. Like, they were always seen as a kind of, me growing up, maybe I'm just like projecting, I don't know. It was always a case of, if you had a handheld, it was nice, but it wasn't ever a necessity. It was always something that you had on the side. You always had, a PlayStation, an Xbox, a Nintendo, whatever it was, and then this other console was on the side. Whereas the Switch kind of merges those two things because it's docked, it's handheld, you can take it with you, you can play it at home. I just don't get, like, I get the argument they're making in this article, and I just agree with it because I'm like, well, yeah, of course it's going to be the best console for selling these games.
Well, you say that, but it does. You've got to highlight the fact that Sword and Shield is the second best selling Pokemon game ever. Scarlet and Violet is now third, likely going to take that second spot soon. Let's Go, Brilliant Diamond, and Legends Arceus are 10th, 11th, and 12th out of 21. So, I mean, what? You've got Red, Green, and Blue at the top. Makes sense. Gold and Silver, Diamond and Pearl, XY, Sun and Moon, Ruby and Sapphire, Black and White. Every other game around them or above them is a Switch title.
Yeah. So another way to look at this is the headline of Nintendo Switch as the most successful platform in the mainline Pokemon games because they've just released the most amount of games on that
one
console.
Platform?
Yeah, because Game Boy and Game Boy Color, you've got
Red, Green, and Blue, Gold, and Silver,
and Crystal.
Crystal.
Game Boy Advance, you've got 5 Red, Leaf Green, and then the Gen 3 games. So that's 5 in total. DS, you've got 3 Gen 4 games and 4 Gen 5 games, which is 7. Which actually isn't that many now that you say. And then the 3DS, we got X and Y, Mega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, 8. Whereas the Nintendo Switch,
Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet, Let's Go Pikachu, and Let's Go Eevee, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and Legends Arceus. So 7.
9? Did you get 7?
1,
yeah,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're right. When you're right,
yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. So, like, is it literally just the case that, and I'm sure there is multiple things going on here, which is why the Nintendo Switch is the most successful platform. But maybe one way to look at it is just, well, it's the most modern console, so you can't buy any of these old games anymore. So maybe that's why. Whereas the Nintendo Switch, you can still buy every single Nintendo Switch Pokemon game.
And when we say you can't buy them anymore, we mean we can't buy them from Nintendo, and therefore they don't count towards sales figures.
Thank you. And the Nintendo Switch has sold 96 million units. Like, it's just out there. Everyone knows what the Nintendo Switch is. It feels like everyone I know owns or knows someone that owns a Nintendo Switch. Whereas back in the day, I never really knew anyone that owned all these handheld consoles because they were so niche.
Yeah, the Game Boy, maybe, but they were kind of expensive at the time, really.
They were. And
it's not to say that the Switch isn't, but it feels like you're getting a lot more for the money with a Switch than you are with a Game Boy. And that's the thing, like, of course the Switch has sold more than any handheld console because it's not a handheld console. People can justify it more. You're not buying a Switch for every person in your house like you would have to do with a Nintendo DS or a Game Boy or something like that. Everybody needs their own. No, it's the console. It's the house console. You get one and that's it.
And the other way you can look at this is that, when you think about buying a Nintendo Switch, the way you can justify it is, well, not only can I get Pokemon, I can also get Super Mario Odyssey. I can get Zelda Breath of the Wild. I can get the latest Mario Kart, which has all the previous DLCs and whatnot. You can get Smash Bros. That has all the previous. Like, the Nintendo Switch has such a great library of content. But when you look back at the previous handheld consoles, they never had those mainline games. They were always spin-offs. They were always sidequels or whatever it might be. They were never the front and center games. So, if you had a choice between, buying a 3DS and buying a GameCube or the Wii, chances are you go for the GameCube or the Wii because well, I've got all these extra titles I can play on it. I think back to, having the original Game Boy, and outside of Tetris and the Pokemon games, I couldn't tell you what I played on that because I didn't really play. I played Lemmings, but I don't know what I played it on.
Yeah, I distinctly remember Lemmings, and that's about it.
Yeah, so it's one of those strange, and it's like the Game Boy Advance. Now, the Game Boy Advance, yes, had a load. I remember playing that, a load of great games that I played, but they were all, like I've said, like sidequels or things that wouldn't get that release on the equivalent of their console. The game, what would it have been then? Game Boy Advance was out around the same time as
it's like the PS2 and stuff. I think I remember playing
the Nintendo console at that time.
Oh, the Nintendo would have been. So the Game Boy Advance was around just before the GameCube. Because I distinctly remember having Pokemon Ruby and wanting Pokemon Coliseum and begging for a GameCube to play Pokemon Coliseum. And apparently the biggest mistake I made was saying that I wanted it just to play Pokemon Coliseum. And I got told, I'm not buying a console just so you can play one game.
Just for Coliseum. Because the game Cube had that slot mechanic where you could, there was a base that you plugged into the bottom, you could then plug in your Game Boy Advance games. You could play your Game Boy Advance games on the TV, which that was the thing I always wanted, and I can never get. And I remember talking about Final Fantasy again, playing Crystal Chronicles, which was technically a 4-player game, but you could only play up to 4-player if you had a Game Boy Advance or a Game Boy SP and the connector cord that plugged in and you used your Game Boy as a controller, which, looking back, is such a rip-off and a con, and they knew exactly what they were doing. But yeah,
no, because every one of your mates already had their own Game Boy Advance and the game, and then you just needed your one rich friend to have the GameCube with the adapter. It's not a rip-off at all. It's just good marketing.
It's just great marketing. Just Nintendo doing what they do of, okay, why sell one game or one accessory when we can sell multiples of them? But yeah, I think looking at this now, the Nintendo Switch, yes, of course, after everything we've said, the Nintendo Switch is the most successful platform for mainline Pokemon games, but I think that's just a given. I don't know what there's no wow moment here for me. It's like, that's obvious, right?
Yeah, it is one of their best-selling consoles of all time. So yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, which I think leads us nicely into the recent non-announcement. And we have a follow-up question as well that asks us about this. So Nintendo president, let's try this, Shuntaro Furukawa announced on Twitter, X, that the company will make an announcement within this fiscal year, which ends March the 31st, 2025. The company has also announced that we will have a Nintendo Direct this June. However, there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during that presentation. And just to wrap everything up so we can have our conversation, King Nido also said, what are your hopes for the Nintendo Switch successor? They're hoping it's called the Super Nintendo Switch, which I do love. I love that.
I made one addition to that, and I said you'd just swap it around so it's the Nintendo Super Switch. So you drop the Nintendo and just go, you got your Super Switch? I'd call it a Super Switch. In fact, regardless what it's called, I might call it the Super Switch.
It's good, isn't it? It works.
Yeah.
But you know what's weird though? It would not work for any other gaming platform like the Super.
You can't call it the Super PlayStation. Yeah.
It doesn't work, and yet for Nintendo, for some reason it works. But thinking about it, Super GameCube, no, even that works for me. You know,
a little bit. Super
Wii.
Would you have bought a Super Wii instead of a Wii U? I think I'd have bought a Super Wii.
Yes, Super Wii. Yeah, and you know what? Maybe it's because they've actually set the scene with the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Super Nintendo Entertainment. You know, it's an upgrade.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it works.
But yeah, so ready for the Super Switch. Anyway, it's coming out 2025. We have to assume now. If they're announcing it this year, it will come out next year. Surely they cannot possibly go, we're going to announce it this year and it's going to come out 2026. That's too late. That's too long to be working on a console.
So it's
everybody
funny
will
that
have
you mentioned that.
them.
Yes, I agree. So just because I've got this fact here and I want to bring it up. So the original Nintendo Switch was first announced in March 2015 and wasn't released until 2017. But I think that was a very different time in the gaming entertainment system. And what I've noticed is that the period between announcement and release is getting shorter, not just for consoles, but games as well. For the most part, there are a few that are outliers, but for the most part, it is, oh, here's a trailer. Oh, yeah, 3 months' time, it'll be on the shelves.
See, the thing is as well that we've known about this for so long now. I mean, when did it come out that the developers had their kits and basically confirmed that it was coming? A year ago?
The year before last. I might have been the end of 2022.
Might have been a year ago. Might have been 2 years ago. So we've known it's been in production for that long. If you have a bit of hardware in production for too long, especially something like the Switch successor, it's not going to be relevant by the time it comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already having to go up against the Steam Deck. They're already having to go up against the Asus, whatever it's called. I always forget. But there are now competitors coming out. And sure, they can go around and be like, no, you're not allowed to emulate our games. And we can see how well that's going for them. Really well, unfortunately. But that's topic we've already covered. Go listen to other podcasts for that. My point is, they have to release it soon. Otherwise, it's just not going to be good enough. And sure, Nintendo have never needed the best hardware within their systems. But I think we're getting to a point now where it's like, no, we do. If you want us to spend 500-600 quid on something, it better be worth it, really.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. There's a couple of key things there of when the first Nintendo Switch came out, it didn't really have a competitor in that market. No. Because, you know, what handheld consoles were there by that point? Well, the PSP Go or whatever it was dead in the water. PSP was done. Mobile gaming is probably the closest, but like it's not the same. You're not grabbing the same audience, and the games that you play are different as well between a mobile and a Switch. And it was at a point where like you could go, okay, yeah, the graphics, if that is one of the key things you consider when buying a console. Yeah, the graphics of the Switch aren't as good as you know, the Xbox and PlayStation at the time. However, it's portable, so you can get away with that a little bit. Whereas now, when you look at some of the quality of the Stream Deck and alternatives, the Switch actually now has competitors. Now, don't get me wrong, it has a hardware competitor, maybe not necessarily a software competitor, because there are certain games that will be available on the Switch and the Switch 2 that aren't available on Steam or the equivalent via legal methods. But there is still a competitive element there that the Switch has to acknowledge and try to get out as soon as possible, because like you touched on, Connor, if they leave it too long, the Switch 2 comes out and already you've got people that break it down and go, yeah, this tech is like 3 or 4 years old. In which case, people go, do I want something that old? Oh, wait, the Steam Deck 2 is coming out next year with, better quality and everything else. oh, I think I'll just wait for that. Like, the Switch 2 needs to, and this is part of the reason why I'm amazed that they aren't going for December 2024 release because of the winter Christmas period and the sales. And I partly think that the reason they've done that is because the Switch was that popular that it sold out everywhere when it was released.
Yeah.
So maybe they go, we want to avoid the Christmas period so we can actually manage the amount of units we've got.
Oh, I don't know about that. It's always good marketing to say it's sold out everywhere. Plus, I think
True.
the Switch is already at a point where it can't run the games that are already on it. I think Tears of the Kingdom shouldn't run at 10 FPS if you're looking at a big explosion. It just shouldn't do that. So the next Switch 2, the Super Switch, needs to be better. And for it to be up to date, it needs to come out soon. It just does. So with that being said, I think they're going to announce it probably November-ish. Okay, here's the thing. If they announce it in November, they will cannibalize their own Switch sales in the December. They will cannibalize anybody who's going to go and get a Switch over Christmas, won't go get one.
Yeah, why would you? Because you go, oh, I just wait an extra 3-4 months. So we thinking an early 2025 announcement, like January, like early January, which ties in actually with Pokemon Presents in February.
I could see them saying an early January announcement for a mid to late 2025 release. I could see them going 8 months later. You get your console 6 to 8 months later, here's your game. Or here's your console. And because of that, regardless when they release it, I do think the C2A is going to be a launch title.
I agree. And the reason I think that is the fact that Game Freak aren't publishing this game in November.
My camera has died. Give me a minute.
Your camera has died.
Keep talking. You're fine.
Oh, okay. I'm texting my daughter, by the way, because she's tried to FaceTime me. I've just said, I'm just recording. So she says, how is Conor doing?
Oh, cute.
she's
Am I the
adorable.
only one she knows other than British?
No, she knows Soul a little bit as well, that I've done a couple of series with, but other than you three, she doesn't know anyone else. Right, okay, I don't know what you're going to do with the editing, by the way. Are we just rolling? Are we just going to keep rolling? Oh, here he is. He's back. There you go. It's fixed it.
So I forgot to put my dummy battery in and was just running off a normal battery. That was a very silly mistake.
We're back.
We're back.
I don't know if you
I never cut. It's fine. Just a little bit of behind the scenes for you.
There we go.
Run your dummy batteries, folks. Do it.
Please do.
But yes, I think it's going to have to be a release title. See, I keep going back and forth on this because it makes sense if they've delayed it to 2025. I feel like they've delayed it to be a release title.
Yep.
Do we think it's going to only be on the Super Switch? Or will it be across both?
So Game Freak does have a history of the new handheld console comes out and they release the Pokemon game on the previous version. So they've done that at least twice, maybe 3 times off the top of my head. But I think the Super Switch is a different, playground, ballpark, whatever you want to say. And I don't think that they would do that with this. I think that while you can get away with it on a handheld, I think on something like the Super Switch, I actually think it would hurt you releasing it on the old console if you don't bring some kind of cross-platform. Oh, you can get it on the old console, but wouldn't you rather play it on the new console, which is also available right now with, better upgrades? Because let's be honest with you, the issues that people have had with Scarlet Violet and the frame rate, which are all valid, if it's a case that it runs on the Switch 2 absolutely fine, but there are bugs and issues on the Switch, like that's almost it's not seen as a bad thing, in my opinion, from most people, because they go, well, yeah, of course it wouldn't run as well on the Switch because it's built for Switch 2 hardware.
See, I would still argue that if it doesn't run, don't release it.
I can understand that.
But Scarlet and Violet is the third best-selling Pokemon game of all time,
Yeah.
so what do I know?
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I think realistically, as consoles become more like PCs, and we've seen this with Xbox with their series, that basically it's like, yeah, you can buy the games for whatever console you've got, but it will just run better on this one. And PCs have done this forever. It's a case of like, yeah, we recognize what graphics card you're running, what CPU you've got, and we'll turn the graphics down effectively. We'll turn our shaders down. We'll turn all this down. So it won't look as good, but it will run. Or you can have it look good, but it won't run well. That's always been something that console players haven't really had to deal with. It's, no, I bought a game for my console. It works.
Yeah.
And the Switch is kind of reaching a point where that's not really the case. I bought a game for my console and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
So I think the reason I think this ZA has to come out on the Super Switch is because, as we say, they've had the developer kit for so long now. So it's plenty of time for them to have developed a game for it. That I think they're swing and a miss if they don't. I think Pokemon is such a unit shifter for Nintendo consoles, even handhelds. Like, sure, the handhelds used to sell. A lot of them really only sold for Pokemon. And I think, yeah, Pokemon will shift a Super Switch. And I think the only way you really do that is not having it on the Switch. Go, no, we heard. They could even PR it and go, look, we heard your complaints.
Yeah.
Sword and Shield's trees weren't good enough. Scarlet and Violet didn't run good enough. We've had to move up to the next console in order to have our games run perfectly. Which is pure PR, because there's no reason the games should have run as badly as they did, even on the Switch. But that's neither here nor there. It makes sense. Whether it makes sense, whether they do it or not, is still all up to Game Freak, and we know what they're like. Either way, we will definitely see Gen 10 on the Switch too.
Agreed. Gen 10 does not come out for the Switch. Point blank, I just don't see how that happens. Legend of Zelda A, there's an argument to be made, maybe there's differences between the two or something else like that. But yeah, Gen 10 has to come out for the Switch successor. Funnily enough, I'm looking at the launch titles for the first Nintendo Switch. Weird that we have to call it the first Nintendo Switch. But 1-2 Switch, Just Dance 2017, Skylanders Imaginators, Super Bomberman R, I'm Setsuna, Snipperclips, Shovel Knight, Fast RMX, and the only title on there that I think was a unit seller was Breath of the Wild. However, that was also available on the Wii U. Now, they're going to need some kind of launch game that is almost that bundle package of, oh yeah, of course I want to buy that bundle because it's got the brand new Pokemon game on there. I don't know enough about Nintendo to know if there will be a launch Mario, if there'll be a launch Zelda game, or any of the other big Nintendo franchises. But let's be honest with you, Pokemon can fill that slot. If Mario isn't available, if Zelda isn't available, Pokemon will shift units.
Yeah, I mean, you've got, realistically, we haven't had a Smash Bros. Game.
Yeah,
like we've had one Smash Bros. Game all the Switch life. We could have one Smash Bros. Game the whole Super Switch life. Same with Mario Kart. Mario Kart realistically is still just the same one we got on the Wii U.
The Wii U.
Yeah, it's had yes, it's had DLC, but it's the same game we got on the Wii U with some tweaks. We need a new Mario Kart game. I don't know if we'll get it so soon because they did just do all the DLC packs and stuff like that. Zelda, we're not going to get another game, another Zelda game for another like 5-6 years, I don't think. I could see them maybe doing like a DLC that you get bundled if you buy it on the Super Switch. Like they do not a Breath of the Wild, the Tears of the Kingdom DLC for the Switch, or you buy it on the Super Switch and get the DLC bundled in. I could see that, but I don't know. I think I think the Zelda creators have a little bit more pull with the Nintendo that
Yeah.
maybe Pokemon do. They can swing around a bit more and be like, no, we're doing it this way. Metroid we got Metroid 4. Is that out yet? Did we ever get Metroid 4?
I don't know. I've never played a Metroid game, so I don't know. While you're searching that, the other... Go on.
No, I think we got Metroid 4. I don't think... Metroid Prime 4 is an upcoming video game. There you go. It was announced in 2017. Right. So that would be very cool. That would be very, very cool if they just went, launch title is Metroid Prime 4. Let's have that, please. There's not... It's got to be Pokemon. It's got to be Pokemon.
Yeah.
Surely.
Pokemon's a launch title, so I'd imagine that, when the announcement happens of, this is the Nintendo Switch success, it'll be out, and then at some point close to that, we will get the announcement of Pokemon Legends ZA launch title on Super Switch. I still think it'll be available on the Switch, but they will sell it in such a way where if you want the definitive experience, you have to buy it on Switch too. Connor, have you got any closing thoughts on this? Because I need to shoot off.
No, that's all good, mate. I'm just sorry. I was having a look at the best-selling Switch games very quickly. We had Mario Kart 8, Animal Crossing New Horizons. I wonder how much of that was COVID-related. Smash Bros, Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey, which I think was a launch title or close to it.
It came out not long after. I don't think. I think.
And then it's Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet.
Sword and Shield. Right.
So yes, these are big sellers. They will shift consoles. I think it needs to be a launch title for the Super Switch. And that's what we will be referring to it as from here on out.
Super Switch. I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's the show for this week. If you gotten this far, you're just a top dollar, aren't you? Before you go, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a review on the podcast platform of your choice. If you're watching on YouTube, then please leave a like and subscribe. 300 is the next big one. It really helps out the podcast. Thank you. If you've got a comment or question, you can reach us by leaving a comment on our podcast on YouTube, by emailing goldenrodpod@gmail.com, by leaving it on our Discord channel, by using the hashtag goldenrodpod on Twitter. Conor, where can we find you?
You can find me on my usual channel at Captain Fidget or at Twitter at CapFidget.
I'm Ben, and you can find me as Professor Owen Gaming. Oh my God, on YouTube and Professor Owen on Twitter. I'm going to get there. We'll be back next Friday for another week of Pokemon podcast content.
See ya.